Thank you so much for coming to our presentation, Resource Discovery in a Changing Content World. I'm Rochelle McLean. I'm a Collection Development Librarian at Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana. And I'm here today with, starting over here, I have Christine Stone with Ex Libris. She's the Director of Product Management. Next to me is Alan Jones, who is the Director of Digital Library and Technical Services at the New School. Hannah McKelvey is Montana State University's Electronic Resources and Discovery Librarian. And then over here is Cynthia Schwartz, who is the Assistant Director for Library Technology at Temple University. So today we'll be talking about what our title is. So as you know, Discovery Services have evolved in recent years. We're not just we're not just pulling up books and articles anymore. We've got LibGuides and website content, databases, research guides that we're trying to make visible to our users. And of course, each of us has our own unique local collections that we want to make discoverable. So today, each of the panelists, I'm going to serve more as a moderator just because there's so many of us. We'll keep these guys on track as far as time goes. We're going to talk about how our content in our discovery systems is surfacing. Christine's going to give us an update on what Ex Libris is doing now and maybe what in the future they're thinking of doing. And we're going to try to keep our time to about 20 minutes and then this is a lively discussion, so hopefully you all at 3:30 in the afternoon will also participate in our lively discussion. We're going to leave some time for you guys to participate, so please do. So with that, the next 3 slides I'm not going to talk a whole lot about, but I just want to give you all background on each school's discovery layer. I'm not going to read these, so go ahead and read as quickly as you can what we're up to. As you can see, at Temple, they have 4 full-time developers, whereas at MSU, we have someone who's considered 50% developer. And then we have other folks who do some of our work. And then over at the New School, they have also one.
Me.
Yeah. That's right. And this is the items that are currently surfacing in at our schools. So. Again, we're all using SpringShare. We're doing our LibGuides. Let's see what else is unique up there. At MSU, we've got our e-journals. We're surfacing our consortial holdings now and doing resource sharing. And then here are just some advanced tools that we're up to. So at MSU, right now we're just trialing browsing and LibKey discovery. So and like I said before, we opened up our holdings to see what resource sharing is like for our academic schools in Montana. And then, I was just going to say, and then Temple and New School and Hannah at MSU will talk about some of those more advanced tools and current tools. And we'll start out with Alan.
So at New School, even though it's me, we do a lot of, I think, really fun and cool things. I actually have a rule that says I don't do anything that isn't fun. We're involved in a few consortia. So one of the things that's really important for us is that we actually we have access to 70 million titles, even though we only have about 260,000 of them. So for us, it's a real important piece to actually represent the consortial holdings and not just our local holdings. And the other thing that I want to just talk a little bit about is, coupled with that, is the delivery experience and what that is. So I'll go into a little bit of that. We do a blended search with full text articles. We are also working with digital assets. We do DDA. So there's a whole bunch of different content streams that come from a bunch of different places, and it's always changing. There's a standing joke that no one ever gets the same number of results in a search engine twice as a result of the fact that everything changes so often. So here, one of the things that you'll see that we did is a customization to actually load some of the, if you don't like the search results that you get in Primo, then you can actually go out to Google Scholar, or you could go out to Easy Borrow, which is our D2D search delivery mechanism for our consortial holdings, or you can go to WorldCat. We actually decided that we were going to begin thinking about the discovery service in much more of an immersive way. And I'm going to tell you the pros and cons of some of that in a few. One of the things here that you'll see is we actually added a reserves buttons for people to add course materials immediately to course reserves. That actually went from, we were doing about 8,000 documents in a semester. We actually went up to 17,000 with this. So just by putting this in the discovery layer, people were already beginning to request more material. So the more that you actually collapse the number of applications that they have to go, the more they actually use it. Whoops. Got it. Okay. Okay. Hopefully. So one of the other things that we also did was we created this more access options, which actually allows people to push requests directly to Iliad. Basically, that little this little widget here in the middle goes to, hey, you just requested something. And the point of doing this and having the control actually in Primo was that regardless of whether we wanted to go to D2D, whether we wanted to go to Iliad, whether we wanted to go to work participants in Project Reshare, the user experience for the students are exactly the same no matter what the fulfillment provider. So they're learning to use the borrowing network now for software that will be developed later because they're going to use the same interface components. So instead of filling out the Iliad form, everything is taken from the bibliographic record of the item and basically shot together with the user ID, and that's the Iliad request mechanism. The other thing that we also are starting to play with, and this is in beta now, is an IFFF viewer for our slide collection so that people would be able to zoom in and out of the full details display. So again, the idea is keep people in the discovery service, make it as immersive as possible, get them to play with the media inside the discovery layer as opposed to sending them out to other systems. So the lesson here is that content providers shouldn't be building other search interfaces. They should just be seen as suppliers at this point. They should be suppliers of whatever metadata we need for whatever players they are in the discovery service. And with that, I'll go to Cynthia, who has a battalion of developers.
Yes, and even then it seems like we don't have enough. But so we've developed Blacklight. We use the Primo Central Index for our articles, and we use Alma as our ILS, but then we put Blacklight on top of that. And what we've decided to do is create a bento. So instead of the single search results, the federated search, we have the bento box, and we've incorporated, so the books and media column is what comes out of the ILS. The articles in the middle and the journals come out of PCI. And then our databases list comes from LibGuides. We track all our list of databases in there. And then website content. We just recently redid our website on Ruby, and we were able to index and pull in all of our website content. And then at the very bottom, you see this is additional content that's coming out of the ILS, but we've broken it out by material type. We also have a link to our digital collections, so Content DM. And something that we want to do in the future is highlight the Content DM so that it's not buried in the bottom like it is here. But we've tried to, break out the different types of materials that you might find. And an ongoing conversation that we have is, well, we want to keep adding, we want to add LibGuides, we want to add LibAnswers, but how many bento boxes is a reasonable number of bento boxes to have? And somebody raised a question, does anybody actually use the journals bento as opposed to the articles or the databases? Maybe we could get rid of the journals and put something else in there. So we've done actually a lot of user research around what displays here, and we'll continue to do a bunch of user research. So, but the biggest thing that we've had to do with our discovery layer is accommodate our new automated storage and retrieval system. So we moved into a new library in August of this year, and we have that beautiful book bot that you see there. And so this meant that a large majority of our collection was now inaccessible to patrons to browse on the stacks in the shelves. So we had to build out our request feature to allow people and facilitate the ease of access for materials that are in the book bot. So that's, you see some screenshots there. And we've added, the little blue bar is help text that says, to request this item from the book bot, please use the request button. Because somebody coming to this might see, oh, it's available, what is the book bot? How do I access it? Where does that live? And we've actually ended up doing that for a couple other places in our availability. For example, the place where we actually do have books is on the 4th floor. And at first the location was just called Charles Library Stacks. Well, there's a lot of people who walked in the library and didn't actually realize there was a 4th floor and that that's where there were books. And so we've changed the wording a little bit and we've added some of the helper text there so that people know if you want a book that says it's on the shelf, go to the 4th floor and you'll be able to find it. So that's a little bit of what we're doing at Temple with our discovery layer.
Okay, so I am from Montana State University in Bozeman. We, compared to these two, have a boring discovery layer. It's the more traditional interface. We do not have a bento box. We explored it. We just didn't have enough developers to actually move forward with it. And based on some of our user testing, we decided it wasn't really worth it for us at this time, and that we're going to stick with just the search box from the main page, and then that just dumps you right into Primo search. In our discovery layer, we have all of your electronic books, journals. We have LibGuides, and then our institutional repository. We do not surface our digital collections at this time, and then we do have our consortial holdings that users can get to from our default search scope, and that was a new change that we just made, I think at the beginning of August, and that's been interesting for us. It's been really useful, but it's also just been a challenge learning how to work that system with our other schools who recently are on the system as well. And then, next one, thank you. We don't really have too many integrations or layers. We're taking advantage of some of the existing ex-libris features. So we do have the Primo resource recommender turned on, and I think we're actually going to end up deactivating it. It takes a lot of time to manage it because you have to do the spreadsheet and upload it, and we're not really getting much user feedback or much interest in it at all. So that's something I think we're going to actually not take advantage of. And then one other, have you all heard of browsing libdiscovery? So we actually decided to go ahead and trial this resource through the end of December. We turned it on at the end of August. And it might talk to, I think, maybe what Alan was saying, where content providers should build something that's sort of standard and works with the system, and you can use it from this layer instead of multiple other ways to explore the content. And so we're actually having really good feedback with this. What it does is it serves to standardize and normalize the publisher website, so you can get one-click access to PDFs directly from Primo. We serve a large undergraduate population, and so making access to these things as easy as possible, I think, is a goal for us. And then I think this last month we've had, I just checked the stats this morning, for October we had 6,443 full text downloads from here, which is pretty good, so we are excited about that. Rochelle and I are actually going to meet to see if this is something we want to continue. The one downside is that it does cost money, but it's a really nice integration with our Primo. So a couple of the challenges that I think we're seeing with Discovery is we recently moved most of our periodicals and our government documents to an off-site location. And for whatever reason, a historical practice at our library was just to create summary holdings for periodicals. I don't know if that is true for everywhere, but now what we're finding is that a lot of these records these periodicals are unlinked and they don't have barcodes. So when you see them in the catalog, this image on top where it just says place hold, the patron's placing a hold on the title. We don't have no idea what issue they want. And so this is a big project for us that our staff is continuing to try to link these and barcode them so that the discovery experience is much better. And that's an example of one that has been barcoded and linked, and it has a nice place hold by the volume issue. We do not have a book bot, which would be nice. We have a staff member that has to go over and pull these every morning, and this is something that I think would be really helpful for her and her team, as well as our users. And so that's just a cleanup project that we're finding in our discovery layer that has to do with our print holdings, and it's just one of those historical things that is carried over and we're dealing with now. The other interesting issue we're having is since we're recently searching our consortial holdings into our main search scope, there's a lot of mysterious things that happen with these systems. And so we're seeing things like the course icon showing for books that are actually on reserve at our other schools on our campus. And so we're handling these issues, I think, one-off, but we just see them and we're not sure why. And as more and more things come into Discovery, I think we're just going to have more and more of these issues to sort of work through and figure out why. And I often get requests. I am not a cataloger, but I often get requests from my cataloging colleagues, like, why does this related title refer to itself and all of this stuff. And so we're trying to figure out how the network zone works with all of our holdings and how the normalization rules impact everything. And so these are issues I don't really have a solution for, but I just wanted to share them with you as things that we're working through and trying to figure out. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it on to Christine.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I would like to talk a little bit more about unique collections. In the past, when we talked about discovery, and we're still looking at this as the main entry point for discovery, is the one search box. You index everything in your discovery index. You have that one search box. You search there and you find something. But with the mass of material that is becoming available today, it's actually becoming more and more difficult, specifically for special library collections, to surface in the result list. So it's easy, to kind of lose that context and lose that special content. There's a lot of special collections which are indexed today. I'm talking about image collections, manuscripts, archival material, but also just collections around specific topics, special interest collections, etc. Also, I think we need to look at what the context is, the context of the material maybe. Some material is really out of the context of its collection, not necessarily the individual item that is floating around somewhere. And also the library users are coming with different context. Sometimes they're coming because they are really interested in a specific manuscript and they're really interested in the collection which that manuscript belongs to. Sometimes they're coming with a topic search and they're going into the search box. So I think we need to just be a little bit more sensitive to how people enter discovery systems and provide them with different entry points. Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about collection discovery. That is a feature which is really about creating a collection and then make it discoverable in the one search box, but in addition providing an entry point via the collection. So again, you will index everything in the index, so it's available via the one search. My entry point is the library. I go to the library website, I start my search, and I find the material. So I find the collection record, and I find the individual records in this collection in my result list. So in that sense, I'm coming from the library discovery one search box. So the second entry point, and that's kind of the crossover here, is actually the context of the collection. I'm coming from the collection. And the crossover here is that when I find an item in my result list, I have a little feature which is saying other items from the same collection. So that's kind of the crossover, the connection between the result list and the record and the actual collection. And then I'm coming to the second entry point, and the second entry point here is really the collection. That is also part of the discovery system. It's part of the UI, so it's the same design, but it's displaying the actual content, the actual collection item in a little bit different way. So as you can see here, it's really good for images because it shows all these little thumbnails with some information. And the user can start browsing in the collection. They can go through the sub-collection to a certain hierarchy, and then also look at the individual items. So again, we have different users, they have different entry points. They come maybe from the one search box, or maybe they're coming also from the collection part, and both is giving them an entry point to the special material. And it's particularly good. I mean, you wouldn't do this for normally for articles or for any of the mainstream material you have discovered. But maybe you have special collections that you really want to surface, you really want to emphasize that discovery, and for that it's really important. So I'd like to show some collections. So these are real collections that libraries put into the collection discovery tool. So I just kind of did a little bit of a selection here. The title is a little bit small here. This is image collections, for example, artworks or architecture. Or the third one here is medicine slides. Also a special collection. Then we have letter and manuscript collections, of course, very typical in many libraries. You have a letter collection, or you have medieval manuscripts in this case, which also come from one collection. So they have the context of the collection, but also they're findable in the discovery system. Audio and video collections, of course. Special interest collections. The first one is about Explore Your Australian Indigenous Language Collection, and the second one is also Veterans Collection, Timothy River. So it may be books actually around that. So the material is quite traditional, but it's around a specific topic or specific topic which is of interest in your region or your city or for your institution. Education and open educational resources. Talk increasingly about open educational resources. So again, that could be a collection that is worth discovering as a collection and not necessarily as individual items. Or you just have something that is very important for your students. What I found on various websites was past exam papers, very important for the students. And the second one is actually interesting. That's managing stress and mindfulness. That's a collection of books about managing stress for the students. So the library put this material together. In the end of the day, this is something that's curated by the library, so you really want to make this available, you really want to make this visible, and not to be hidden somewhere in your result list. So that's just to summarize how this works. You have the library discovery as a doorway. It's not necessarily just one search, it's also about having a collection or giving access to a collection and giving a different entry point to discovery. Via the collections or via the one search result list. And then you also have the recommendation option. So you have the item in the result list and it's saying other items from the same collection. So it's also giving the user a way to, from the result list, to move over to the collection discovery. And that's my part here.
Questions for the audience, but before we ask those, does anyone have any questions? We have 15 minutes, so we can start with questions from you all.
Hi, I'm Stephen Rentuck from Coherent Digital. Could you give a flavor for the percentage of search you think is going through the discovery gateway versus Google?
For the new school, it's about 50-50. One of the things that we know is that There's part of the issue with us is that we're a trade school. Parts of the school of design, many more fashion type of images and things that are not necessarily within the scope of our collection. So at least from what we're gathering when we do citation analysis and other types of things, we're seeing that it's about a 50-50 split.
I was going to say, so I don't have an answer. I'd have to check with my colleagues and look at the data. But one thing that we want to do with all of our bibliographic data is add structured data to it so that it can be, each individual bibliographic record can be found in a Google search results, the same way you look for a movie or whatnot.
And I'd say with ours, I don't have stats, but it's probably a 50-50 split. I know a lot of our faculty, our Google Scholar is popular, and we do have, the link resolver integration set up there. We publish our holdings out to there so that they can access them that way. And then we've had colleagues who have created structured data, and so all of our databases actually will populate in Google search results. So if you're I think it's all location-based. So if you're at a coffee shop working and you're looking for academic search complete, it'll surface that, and then it will take you through the library's login. So we're trying to make that connection because a lot of our users, Google is very popular, so you have to recognize that.
So the other thing that I just want to say, do you want to talk about the sitemap structured data?
Well, no, not really. No, there is an option to publish the data. I'm just not the expert. This is why I'm kind of, okay. Publishing data is not so simple, so we have an expert and actually also an external consultant that we work with to be able to publish the data to Google. It's not so simple. This is also, I'm not the expert there, so I wouldn't be able to answer any technical questions, but that's obviously it's important to our users and our customers. So we do publish the data and we do have a process to do that.
So there are, in my other job, I'm on the steering committee for Luna, which is the Savers user group for North America. And prior to that, I had been the Primo product working group chair. And we work very closely with some folks in New South Wales as well as other schools in Australia to do a beta project to publish their sitemaps, which is their holdings in Primo, to see what that looked like. And it was actually kind of an interesting experiment. The question that was asked was, once everybody starts doing it, what does it look like? And so those are the types of questions that, are there ways that you're able to personalize that so that I'm not getting New South Wales version of Harry Potter, but I'm getting my own? Can we use data, contextual data with a person's login to prioritize my libraries as opposed to other library stuff? So that was an experiment that's still kind of ongoing and working. So there is work to be done there. So, yeah.
I'd love to know what resources others are including in their discovery there.
I'm just curious, how many people have non-text-based images, audio? 1, 2? What about data sets or anything along those lines?
We have the data sets that are available through, I think there's a couple of databases that we subscribe to.
The ICPSR stuff?
I think so, yeah. So we have the data sets available through those databases.
One of the things that we found that was really interesting with that little Iliad request widget was that our requesting for interlibrary loan went up 130% as a result of that one-click business. The problem was that people didn't want what they got. What would basically happen was that the requesting was so easy that they would hit the requests and not necessarily have any kind of context as far as what they want or what they didn't. So one of the things that I've been working with folks at ProQuest as well as Syndetics Unbound is to have a look inside service or something within the discovery layer that would help disambiguate very closely named things, because inevitably what was happening, and we saw this because it was about 30% of the hold shelf, where people wouldn't even check out the book. They would open it, they would say this isn't what I wanted, and they would just give it right back. So if you think about it in terms of the amount that you're paying to move that book back and forth, not from off-site, but UPS, from school to school, when you figure the labor out and everything, we figured that was about $8 a transaction. So we really needed to, and we need to have those types of cues for patrons to actually make much better and more informed decisions. And I look at that as much as contextual data as anything, those types of linked data services within the display record. How many people are using Summit? Anyone? Wow. EDS? It's okay, we're not like, I mean, seriously, we're not like, nobody's an EDS hater here, please.
So is everybody else using Primo?
How many people don't have a discovery layer?
I'm with a publisher, but I find that I'm with a publisher and I help our new customers who sign up for our platform select the right collections or databases within their discovery platform and their link resolver product. And I find that probably 90% of them are on Ex Libris, on the Primo. I'm surprised when I find someone who's using a different discovery service. So.
Well, if Marshall's numbers are to be believed, there is somewhere around 70% of ARLs. Marshall Brady's number.
I guess I would just be curious for the advanced tools or integrations that any of you are running in your discovery layers that you find really useful, or things that you wish existed, I don't know, in order to make discovery a little bit easier.
It might be interesting to just see how many publishers versus how many librarians, because I suspect there's quite a lot of publishers here.
So how many are publishers?
Do you want me to save you millions of dollars? No, seriously, do you want me to save you millions of dollars? Stop developing search engines. Give the data to the aggregator and the provider, and give good data. Because it sucks not being able to find your stuff even though we have access to it. Please, for the love of God. Can you clarify?
Yeah. What kind of data do you mean besides just the traditional metadata, title metadata?
This is her specialty more than mine. I would love to be able to do, as I was saying, look inside. Give me 5 pages that a patron can actually look at, including table of contents data, so that when we're buying your ebook package, that we've got 5 pages for them to be able to open up and look into. I think, you know, accurate thumbnails would be another really good thing, and thumbnail links, as well as series data. That's another really important thing. As full of bibliographic data as you can, and please add ORCID IDs and second and third authors.
They're not in medicine, I'm telling you. It is like pulling teeth to get physicians to add ORCID IDs.
Well, start somewhere.
We do, we try.
Because many times it's, I'm the second author on a lot of things, and not that I do vanity searches in the search engines. I don't. But at the same time, I think it's important to see who's publishing with whom, because that's an important metric that you can build relationships off of. And the more relational this data becomes, it's not just data anymore. It's about the relationships that are being made between this data. So thinking about search, not from the perspective of one big set of results, but in thinking of how many things are like these other things. We have to have that publisher data in order to make those relationships. The other thing that I'll also say, and I'm going to say this to every publisher because I've got you all in a room now, please fill out the ODI conformance checklists, the Open Discovery Initiative's conformance checklists, because we actually go against those to actually see, is all of the data actually exposed that should be exposed?
Most publishers don't know about this, don't know about the ODI.
Okay, well then you don't have an excuse now.
No, I know.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the types of things, particularly when you think, you have to stop thinking about metadata as a value add to libraries. It's now a cost of acquisition. Because the more that moves into demand-driven acquisitions, if you don't have the right data, I'm not going to buy your stuff. 90% of my collection budget right now is on demand. So if I don't have your metadata, I don't know your stuff. It's that simple. We have a bigger collection, we have a bigger discovery pool than we do number of titles in our entire print collection. So if you think about that, not having metadata means you're not going to be found. And you're in competition with every other person in here to try to sell your stuff. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Yeah?
Can I ask the panel a question? Because I'm just wondering about, do you see any kind of tension between the more you put in your discovery layer, the more complex it becomes, and the less people want to use it? That's a horrible question, I know, but
No, it's not,
like the
actually.
feeling that people want quick access to stuff, and you're saying, but here's the consortial holdings as well, and we can get this for you. You can just click this button and we'll bring it in for you. But everything we add and all of the special content, unless the relevancy is really, really good, we're putting friction, seems to be the word of this year. So we're adding friction for the users. So I'm just wondering, have you observed any of that?
I would say yes. At our school, we're a little bit more selective about what we put out there. For example, if you flip on something in the Primo Central Index, it gives you, like chapter level. We've done a couple collections, and we got some feedback that that's overwhelming, or users just want title level. And so we have had some of those conversations, about what should be in the discovery layer. I have colleagues back home in Montana that like to just turn on everything. And so I think it's maybe a case-by-case basis if you have a policy for what goes in there or not. And then it depends who's teaching. We have some librarians who they point more advanced researchers to like specialized databases, whereas we view our discovery layer maybe more for our undergraduate users. So we do try to curate a little bit. But yeah, the more and more we add, there is that friction about what's useful, what's too much. We're competing with Google. Yeah.
But is it related to certain specialties? Because like I'm in medicine, and I know that there's all the mesh, all that. Are you using all the mesh materials? And are there some fields where they don't have a lot of metadata?
Fashion. That's the thing that comes to mind. The thing I was going to say is fashion. It's because people want to know what's coming out, not what's been cataloged. So it's true.
But things are embargoed.
You don't know what an embargo is in fashion. That's crazy. But I think that getting to your point, there are certain types of music is another place that's horrible. We have a music library, and the problem is that since most of our Primo instance is actually dealing with the liberal arts and with the design faculty, the musicians can't find anything because they're searching for things by uniform title as opposed to the title of the work. Addition is a really hard thing to try to figure out, especially when you're thinking about fervor and dedupe and what that whole thing looks like. Making a differentiation between what a score is versus, the question of parts to whole, it becomes a really important thing. There are some places that really love to have chapters included in their search results. There are others that don't. I think a lot of it depends on who your audience is and who your patrons are. We are strictly an undergraduate and in some ways trade type of school. So the assumptions that they're bringing to the search engine are basically that it works like Amazon or it works like Google, and they want it to be comprehensive. There is no kind of curation there. I think if you were looking at a school that had much more graduate level type of work, it would be much more frustrating, and they would expect for things like mesh subject headings to be there, or they would expect specific disciplines, specific language to be the facets for their subjects. I don't necessarily see that for undergrad.
Thank you. It's 4:12, so we'll wrap it up.
I wasn't planning on doing this, but since we're talking a lot about publishers and then metadata that they provide to libraries, there are also third-party companies that will work with publishers on providing metadata that is really valuable to libraries. I work for a company that employs essentially people with only MLISs or MLISs. And we kind of help publishers with that type of thing. And then you're no longer really responsible for that metadata because if the libraries do have a problem with it, we're the ones that have to deal with it as the metadata provider. So just throwing that out there, that might be an avenue for some publishers to pursue.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone.
Thank you.